Hi class, welcome back. We are in chapter 3 and we are talking about section 3, aquatic ecosystems. If you're not already at the top of a fresh page, you probably need to go there because we're going to start out drawing a T-chart, okay? So at the top for section 2, for section 3 of chapter 3, you need to write down the water on Earth, okay? And that aquatic environments are divided into freshwater and marine ecosystems. So on the left of the T-chart, you'll write freshwater systems, and on the right, marine water systems. So underneath the title for freshwater, you're going to put only 2.5% of the water on Earth. So after you write that down, that's amazing to think about. When you think about all of the water we have on Earth, and we're mostly made of water, and we can live longer without food than we can water, only 2.5% is actually fresh water that we can drink. Okay? Under the title Marine Ecosystems, I need you to put 97.5% salt water. Writing down under freshwater ecosystems, one example, rivers and streams. They flow in one direction. Second bullet point, all you need to write down, landscape decides speed of water. So landscape decides the speed of water. And the last bullet point, as you can see, it's a vocabulary word. If you're not drawing attention to that, I'm going to be marking off for that soon. So sediment is the material that is deposited by water, wind, or glaciers. So let's just talk about this bullet point right here. You don't need to write it down. Interactions between land and water result in differences in erosion, nutrient availability, and species composition and diversity along the course of the water. Now, if you want to write that down, you can, but I think that is just common sense, okay? What you do need to know about, there's actually two types of moving water. There's fast and then there's slow. So please add to your notes under rivers and streams, fast moving water, because it's going through so fast, okay? Nothing has time to settle. So since nothing has time to settle, there's less sediment. And when there's less sediment, there's less organic matter because it doesn't have enough sediment to stay in and grow. And when you have less sediment and less organic matter, we have fewer species that can live in that ecosystem. Now, if we contrast that with slow moving water, because it's just meandering along, just, like Kermit the Frog, just having a good day, sipping on a cup of coffee, okay? Everything's moving super slow. And because things are moving super slow, it's not all just getting washed away like the fast-moving water. So in this case, sediment is deposited as mud, silt, and sand. So now you have 3 different types of sediment. And those things help support a diversity of plant and animal species. Next on our T-chart under freshwater ecosystems, lakes and ponds. So other than the fact that a lake and a pond is a big hole in the dirt where water collects and stays, it's fun to go fishing there and maybe take your boat, okay? Maybe even swim. What you do need to know is this bullet point right here, an inland body of standing water. That's what it's called, okay? So in scientific terms, what you need to write down and know, an inland body of standing water. Something else, when it comes to lakes and ponds, temperature can vary depending on the season. So for our area of the United States, it's going to be very, very cold and possibly even frozen during the wintertime. And I have swam at Clearwater Lake before during 4th of July weekend a few years ago. It's when they put all the ban on fireworks. And I think it was like 105 for many, many days. And the lake water was at 98 degrees. So yeah, it was pretty warm. So before you write anything down, I want you to think about this third bullet point. It says turnover in lake water circulates nutrients and oxygen between water depths. So if I think of that in the way of a family or a hierarchy, if you will. So here we have Dad. Happy Dad. Okay. Here we have Mom. Okay. We have child, the oldest. All right. We have the second child. And we have a third child. And let's make this one a baby. Okay. So here we have our hierarchy. Okay, Dad, Mom, 3 children. If we looked at this as we look at lakes and ponds, there would be different levels. So this would be level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5. Okay. So why am I telling you this? In the Dark Ages, like literally in the Dark Ages, there was a hierarchy just like this. And men came first, then children, then moms, and then babies. So there's this old expression that says, hey, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. The reason for that is because they only took a bath in the Dark Ages, what, once a year? That's why brides got married in June, and they carried flowers so they wouldn't smell so bad. And June is usually when people took their bath. So if we were to pretend this were bath water, Dad would get all the clean water. Then Mom, so it's slightly dirty. And then the child would get to go. Now it's very dirty. Now it's even worse. And for the baby, you can't see through it. You cannot see the baby. Okay? If we were looking at this in terms of food, just like a pond, and we had just one steak, and we have 5 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the right thing to do would be to split it up into even amounts, which I'm not good at. So we're going to pretend that that's all the same, that this is 10, this is 10, this is 10, this is 10, and this is 10. So you've been taught your whole life, life is fair, and we should all get the same cut of steak. Well, when I was growing up, and around World War II especially, Dad would get half the steak. So he would get 50%. Mom, she would get 30%. And then each child would get 10% of the steak. So if we never had turnover in lake water to circulate those nutrients and oxygen, then at the very, very bottom of that chart, they're not going to get any nutrients or oxygen. You have a picture in your packet, so you don't need to write it down, but I would definitely go through and take a look at that because you will have something like this on your test. So in lakes and ponds, you need to know in the T-chart, it's divided into 3 zones, and it's based on the amount of sunlight that penetrates the water. So write this down. Divided into 3 zones based on the amount of sunlight that penetrates the water. Our first zone is called littoral zone. It's the closest to shore, it's shallow, and sunlight reaches the bottom. So right here. And I would put I period, E period, productive, numerous producers. Okay. Our second zone, Limnetic, it's open water, but it's still well lit. It's right here. Its production is dominated by phytoplankton and free-floating autotrophs. And it's home to many freshwater fish, so it's kind of like the middle class. There's a bunch of it. And then lastly, down here in the bottom, and you can see we had to magnify it, okay? We have the profundal zone. It's the deepest part of a lake or pond. And light does penetrate, but it's super, super small amount. And because of that, it's colder and it's lower in the oxygen. Okay, on the top right of our marine ecosystem, I need you to write down Intertidal Zone, and that it's a narrow band where the ocean meets land. And because of that, organisms have to adapt all throughout the day as tide comes in and tides leave, and writing down that it's divided into vertical zones. The name of those 3 zones are pelagic, abyssal, and benthic. Now, it's important to note that pelagic zones actually have 2 subcategories. The first one is photic, and it's shallow enough that sunlight is able to penetrate. We continue our program after a short fire drill. The second zone of the pelagic zone is aphotic. Aphotic is an area that sunlight is unable to penetrate. So if you think of abiotic, biotic stood for life, A stood for no or none. So this is no light. Our second zone is a benthic zone. It is along the ocean floor, so right here. Okay. In shallow areas, the benthic zone receives sunlight, like right here. And as depth increases, light and temperature decrease. Pretty much straightforward. And finally, this region right down here, right there, that is the abyssal zone. Water is extremely cold, no light goes down there, and the organisms that do live down here, like these, have to depend on food materials that sink from the surface. The next, under marine ecosystems, coastal ocean and coral reefs. Please just write that down. Coral reefs are one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, and it's widely distributed in warm, shallow marine waters. So you're done with the T-chart. So underneath the T-chart, we actually have something called transitional aquatic ecosystems. An example of that are wetlands, i.e. marshes, swamps, and bogs. They're completely saturated with H2O, but they do support aquatic plants, and we call that, of course, again, the wetlands. Has several levels of diversity as well as high levels. And our final transitional aquatic ecosystem is an estuary. An estuary is where our fresh water, from the left side of your chart, from a stream or a river, meets salt water from our marine ecosystems in the ocean. Estuaries can support a variety of habitats such as a mangrove forest or salt marshes, and it's home to a lot of different sharks for mating seasons. This ends Chapter 3, last section 3.